Hello, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Emma, and I'm the founder of Signed by Stories. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white skinned woman with long blonde curly hair. I have hazel eyes and am wearing a red sweater that's a little off the shoulder. In the background behind me are purple walls and a white sliding door. So today I am here chatting with Corey Burrell. Corey reached out to me a few weeks ago about a film project that he was working on a few years ago. He shared with me that this film was to raise awareness about the challenges of finding mental health support as a deaf person. So after talking back and forth for a while, I learned that Corey's also a really big Star Wars fan.
That's correct.
He's pretty close to an expert on trains and railroads too,
hmm
and has been able to use these hobbies to advocate in really cool, unique ways. That's the reason that he's sitting here with us today. So, Corey, would you mind introducing yourself and then maybe giving us a little bit of background on how you got into these hobbies?
Sure. So, hello there, everyone. My name is Corey Burrell. What Emma says. My pronoun is he, him, and I am wearing a black hoodie with my favorite character from Star Wars, Ayla Secura, on the front. Behind me is a bed and some blankets as well as a poster. Of course, you can't see it, more like a banner of the 501st Legion as well. And my hat that I'm wearing is hickory stripe, so it's a railroad engineer hat, pretty much. Classic railroad engineer hat.
Really cool. I didn't know that. Thanks,
Yes,
Corey.
my pleasure.
So, yeah, what got you into these hobbies? I remember when we first connected, you really taught me a lot just in
Mhm.
that first meeting. So I'm really curious, and I'm sure our those of us tuning in are curious to learn more about what brought you into that.
Right. So the railroad hobby. So when I was really, really little, during my early childhood, when I was about 3 years old, my parents would take me on the Conway Scenic Railroad, and I think it was around the time when we just moved to New England, I guess, or not New England, but we just moved to New Hampshire, and my parents thought, it would be cool to visit the White Mountains, and so we went on the Conway Scenic Railroad, and I was just 3 years old, you know, um, and that I think was what inspired me for years to come to really take an interest in trains, and that's a very happy part of my childhood that that I always cherish, and it just something that ever since I was really, really little, it's something that I really, really been passionate about. And once middle of my high school career, I guess, or during high school, I guess, decided to, look more into seeing how, trains are run, and, if that's something that would be a good career fit for me. Of course, I've struggled for so much, just, trying to communicate with railroad workers back when I was 17 years old. Unfortunately, a lot of railroad workers, especially heritage railroad workers, because my emphasis is, strictly heritage trains or heritage railroads. And my experience is that, those guys are older, some of them, not all of them, but for the most part, the heritage railroad workers and railroads in general think that just because you're deaf, that means that, it's a dangerous job, which I totally understand. But, with my hearing devices, my hearing aid and cochlear implant, I can still hear quite normally, even though it's pretty much digital for the most part. And just by being deaf and wear hearing devices, I can still hear the radio. I can still hear, the crew, and communicating with them. That's no issue. Um, Mainly that, yeah.
What did you do when you were trying to work on the railroad and you were being told you couldn't because you were deaf. And I'm sure you've received similar responses since then.
Right.
I mean, did you
Mhm.
try to find support? Did you try to find people to talk to? Anyone who maybe had been through a similar situation?
Right. Well, my emphasis is basically sending out letters and reaching out to railroad to see if they'd be able to hire me. Heritage railroads, by the way, not the big Norfolk Southern and stuff like that. Their rules are very very strict. But it's more like it's finding the right person that would agree to take someone like me and teach me how trains are run and stuff like that. And also, I am friends with a female railroad engineer who works at a railroad in the Midwest. She runs the Heritage Railroad. She's absolutely very, very inspiring, and she has a ton of experience with people with disabilities, the deaf community, people with Down syndrome, etc. And she's been very, very extremely friendly to me, and I'm very, very fortunate to be connected with her. And she has, been open to someone like me, which I'm very happy about. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's great that you found, support in that way. And I think that's why, I brought you on is,
Mhm.
these are the ways that we can find and become connected to support surprisingly through trains,
Absolutely.
through I know
Mhm.
you're also passionate about the Star Wars trilogy and you're really a
Yes.
big fan. And I
Mhm.
know that Comic
Mhm.
Con and really I'm not sure. I feel like I'm probably not using the correct
Right.
terminology, but
Yeah.
those fan bases are really big nowadays, and they're really supportive to, people who are really interested in those types of movies and uh, that type of entertainment. So I think it's really cool the path that you're on, and I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about the film that you were working on to raise
Mhm.
mental health awareness,
Mhm.
and yeah, what was your concept for that?
So I was doing at one point a Star Wars fan film project.
Mhm.
Just that was basically about raising deaf awareness, and basically it would have been about a deaf Padawan character, I guess, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure what your knowledge of Star Wars is like, but it would have been a
Very
deaf
minimal.
Padawan. Yeah, it would have been about a deaf Padawan who is trained by the Jedi Master Aayla Secura during the later half of the Clone Wars.
Okay, and
And
sorry, can I interrupt for those of us who may not know, what is a Padawan?
so a Padawan is basically like a young Jedi in training, I guess,
Okay,
and a
cool.
Jedi Master is training the Padawan.
Oh, nice, okay.
So yeah, so I thought that would have been a good idea because I wanted to do something that kind of tells my experiences at school with being bullied and not having the best teachers that would understand the difficulties that
Mhm,
not just being deaf but the challenges that come with being deaf as well.
yeah,
And ever since I was really really little, I really like around about 9 years old, I've always deeply related to Master Illa Sakura, because of her ability to show compassion, gentleness, patience, kindness, and empathy. Something that my teacher really never showed much of.
mhm,
Same with my peers as well, and that had a devastating impact on my mental health for many many years to come, including my entire school tenure. And I felt that if Star Wars was real, that Master Illa Sakura would be a great teacher for someone with my challenges and difficulties. And strangely enough, the character seems to have a something that the Star Wars fandom doesn't know much about, is that the character does have a small, I guess, support base for people with disability. And
mhm,
I just find that to be really special, because of her approach to speaking and corresponding with students, and it's just in a gentle, very
yeah,
nurturing fashion that people like me and those with disability would deeply relate to. And I grew up with, being yelled at a lot by, by my teachers, by my peers. And, it's nice to have someone with that extremely gentle and nurturing approach. And it does ring a tone with me a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
Mhm,
really powerful and really
mhm,
powerful just representation too for the larger disability community, especially in I feel like sci-fi. There isn't a
yeah,
lot of that. I know nowadays in media there are more deaf characters and
mhm,
deaf people being represented.
right.
Um,
Mhm,
but this is just fascinating, and I
mhm,
am really enjoying learning more about the film. That
mhm.
and I think you should get it started again. I
Yeah,
really
I
think
will.
you should turn it into a personal project.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
yeah, I'm sorry to learn about some of the bullying that you went through during school.
Yeah.
Would
Mhm.
you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So growing up, I went through so much with, you know, bullying, but yes, it's more like, yes, it was a part of being deaf, but the challenges of being deaf with being able to socialize and people not able to understand, the way how we socialize sometimes. I mean, not everybody is the same. And, I was chastised a lot for my challenges with, socializing with others. And of course, I had a speech pathologist, several of them actually throughout my entire school tenure that would help me out with that. And there have been times where, I felt like maybe I should be more independent and, how to learn how to stick up for myself. And
Mhm.
there were times when bullying would get physical as well. Fortunately, there's been times where it was so bad that students at school would get suspended for what they would do to me. I mean, this only happened really once, to be honest, but it goes to show how far the bullying that I experienced went. And of course, when I was bullied, there was a time when I was peer pressured into doing stuff that I wouldn't say was inappropriate, but it was definitely dedicated to making me look very foolish, I guess, if you want to call it
Mm,
that.
yeah.
So I was I guess gullible, but as I got older, I realized not to do stuff that I guess you're not supposed to do, just so others won't you know just try to make you look like a fool. And unfortunately, that was the extent of what I went through with bullying. And I mean, there's been times when I was younger, and I want to say about between fifth and sixth grade, there were kids that would try to accuse me of stuff that I'd never done, and just so they
Mm,
could try to get me suspended or expelled. Um, it's just really, really unfortunate that because I went to a very rural not high school, but yeah, I went to a rural elementary school, and I was pretty much the only mixed race. There was yeah, I was the only mixed race student, and there was another a Hispanic student, and both of us got really picked on a lot.
mm,
And I think that there, I won't say 100% for sure that was the case, but I have a hunch that that contributed to a lot of the bullying as well, and it was not a comfortable scenario for me at
yeah.
all. Hmm.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I know we in the deaf community there are a lot of stories, of being bullied
Right.
growing up, whether depending on your schooling environment, if you were
Right.
mainstreamed or if you were put in
Right.
a deaf school or if you communicated differently or weren't
Right.
proficient in sign language, that can,
Right.
cause a lot of bullying.
Hmm. So,
Yeah.
right.
Go-
So, not to interrupt you, but
No, good.
what's important to mention is that when I was throughout all my entire school tenure, I struggled with whether or not was I deaf or was I part of the hearing crowd, and that really, really had a major impact on my mental health. And just to think about which who am I? Am I a deaf person or am I a hearing person? And, I was, constantly pressured to be part of the hearing crowd, I guess, when in reality, I didn't realize until like late high school or mid high school that I was part of the deaf crowd because of, just my interaction with, hearing people. And it just was not good at all. And I suffered as a result of that for my entire high school tenure.
Mm.
Mhm.
Wow. And how would you identify yourself as a hearing person, as a deaf person? Are you still finding your identity?
Definitely, I settled on, being a deaf adult or a deaf person, yes, or a deaf citizen.
Yeah. And what has your experience been with accessing the deaf community? Or what was it like when you first found the deaf community? Was it kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't know this world existed? Or,
Well, yeah, funny that you mentioned because I went to, I think, around late elementary school, I went to deaf camp in a summer camp, I think, at Clark School in Massachusetts. I think it's called Clark School for the Deaf or something like that. And I noticed that when I went to Clark School for the Deaf during the summer for summer camp, I had literally no problems with other deaf kids. I got along with them just fine, socialized with them. I did befriend someone briefly who was from Jamaica, which was pretty cool. He was very, very nice. Yeah. Um, yeah, I never really had any issues with consorting with other deaf hard of hearing people like me, and I just my experiences with them for the most part have been pretty ideal, and I'm very happy about that to say the least. And
that's good. Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's good. I'm very glad to hear that too. Sure, when you came into the deaf community, you probably took note of or got a pulse of what was going on with the conversation around mental health and
hmm,
inability to access services or find support that was, culturally centered and
right.
also accessible. What has been your experience with finding mental health support? Do you feel like it's been as difficult, less, or more? Or do you feel like the experiences are different?
So that's a very good question. I've been in counseling my entire life, and I have always felt like that. Therapists, psychologists, counselors don't understand the deaf community, and many of them aren't qualified to understand us, in my opinion. Um, and that has had a severe impact on my mental health because I was working with therapists and counselors, and they weren't understanding what I was going through at school, and how to deal with that. And I eventually found deaf services where I am currently located now, and they have a, I guess, deaf mental health service, which is good and actually not very common with that, unfortunately. And they've been a little bit more, or definitely a lot more empathetic with me than than the non counselors or therapists that aren't really, I guess, qualified to work with the deaf community, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
I think you really summed it up really well.
mhm,
But I think that your experiences also show that just because you can speak or you have access to the spoken language doesn't mean
right.
that you have access to quality support. As you're
Absolutely.
telling us now, it's been difficult for you to find support out there, and it's really just such a diverse set of challenges because the community itself is so diverse, and how which language is used and which modes of
Mhm,
communication are used.
mhm,
So I think that sharing out your experience is really helpful for many therapists out there who may not
right.
have deep enough of an understanding of the
Mhm,
community to know that spoken English is
yeah.
not,
Mhm,
it's not the end all be all for accessing mental health services, especially
right.
for, marginalized groups that may, use a
Mhm.
different language.
Right. And something to note too. I'm open to sharing, my diagnosis of, my mental health issues. I have, what do I have? I have depression. I have anxiety, adjustment disorder, PTSD, mood disorder as well, I guess. I mean, and those have always had a big impact on my life. And what many people don't understand is that these challenges affect people in different way. The way how they, communicate with others, the way how they socialize with them. And I just think that it saddens me that, I've even gone through bullying with, explaining how my mental health challenges work. And, to be chastised for that is, it's just really, really heartbreaking to me. And, it's just unfortunate that, mental health is just so highly stigmatized to this day. And what many don't understand is like what you said on your website, that, mental health for the deaf community is 40 years behind. And it's just truly, truly unfortunate that that's the case. And it just because that, in my opinion, that there's just not enough tools to help, people who are in the deaf, hard of hearing community like us. And it's just truly, truly unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
I completely agree.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess as we wrap up, do you
Hmm.
have any, I guess, what would you say to others out there who may be in a similar situation, struggling to find support, feeling very isolated in what they're going through? Do you have any recommendations or like words of encouragement to send out to them, maybe to pursue their own creative ways of finding healing, like we've done with Sign by Stories, like you've done with
Hmm.
pursuing the film? Do you have any, words of motivation for them?
Yeah, I would just say do something, or find something that you're really, really passionate about and go for it. I think that's really, really important. And don't give up. Even if you have to fight to get to that point, just don't give up that fight. It's never over until it's over. And that's the attitude that I try to, present, because I never like to surrender. I never like to back down.
Yeah.
And I know that people that, I've encountered over the years tell me to, give up and back down. And I'm not about that at all. I will never surrender. And, the fight is never over until it's over.
Yeah. Thank
Hmm.
you. That's amazing. And I'm a big
Hmm.
believer on it really only takes connecting with one right
Hmm.
person who really
Hmm.
shares your vision to really make big things happen, which is I think
Hmm.
what happened with you and me too.
Right.
So, yeah, that I guess that's something I'll send out there is just keep reaching out. There is
Hmm.
someone out there who wants to work alongside you in this. So, with
Hmm.
that said, I mean, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Corey,
Hmm.
for joining today.
Hmm.
I really
Thank you
enjoyed
so much
speaking
for
with
having
you.
me. I appreciate it. Hmm.
Of course, of course.
Hmm.
And thank you, everyone else out there, for tuning in. And be sure to check back in for more episodes. But have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.